The Centre Court MBA Festival is this wonderful opportunity to look at the very best business schools all around the world. And I'm delighted to spend the next half an hour with two individuals from a truly, truly international business school, the IESE Business School, based out of Barcelona. They also have a campus in Madrid that attracts top talent from the four corners of the globe. And it's always lovely to welcome Paula Amorim, originally from Brazil, and herself an IESE graduate from the class of 2016. She had a wonderful consulting career in Brazil, but is now the MBA Admissions Director at IESE, and we'll be talking all about the school, the program, of course, what they're looking for in the next generation of talent. And of course, what they were looking for a couple of years ago in Giang Nguyen. Giang is originally did her undergrad at the University of Washington, the Foster School in Finance. Enjoyed a career that saw her doing e-learning in Mexico. She co-founded an investor site, has been working in consulting for EXO. And here she is now about to finish. You'll be graduating this summer again for the class of 2023. So welcome to both of you. And Paula, perhaps we can start just with that general introduction of IESE, its incredible international pedigree. And I always like to include in that a sense of the mission and the values of IESE that I think, are so strongly rooted in the school and its culture. So tell us a little bit about the IESE Business School.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And it's always a pleasure to be here. So I think that's always a great way to start. Even if you hadn't mentioned, that would probably be the way that I would start talking about IESE. That's my standard route, is because IESE is a mission-driven school, right? So everything that we do is has this orientation towards our mission and our values, and I can say that Zhang is nodding, because I think that we can say that they're pretty consistent with following with the values that we have. No? So IESE exists because we believe that through business we can make the world a better place, right? So we decided that if the world is run by companies, if we have good people leading the companies that are running the world, then we can have a direct impact in making the world better, right? And then with this mission, we have some underlying values of professional excellence, of spirit of service, and ethics that we believe and that we want to instill in our students and potentially and eventually alumni, so that they can be the leaders that we expect them to be, right? And take the right decisions. And so everything in the IESE experience is designed to bring those values, and that we live in reality those values and that culture, right? So the spirit of service, I like to say that it's the ultimate level of collaboration, right? So like, we are a very collaborative school. As you said yourself, it is very international. So with internationality comes diversity, and with diversity also comes challenges, right? Because this means that people are just very different from each other. Although we do have something that brings us together, because we all, no matter where we were in our lives, something brought us together at IESE. So I think that we share something deep down, but the backgrounds are very different, right? Not only in terms of career, but also in terms of undergrad, culture, language, communication skills, career aspirations. So we are a pretty diverse school, and we're trying to build in our students the ability to work in a very diverse environment, right? And we know that the world is constantly changing, so we're also trying to adapt to that world and what diversity means. Zhang is actually in the Diversity and Inclusion Committee at IESE. So like, we have this committee that we built a couple of years ago to try to define what we see as diversity and inclusion, and now we have belonging and dignity, right? So it's a school that we're always trying to build skills in students where they can make the best decisions, always focused on people, right? So we can be responsible leaders at the end.
Right. You talk about that relationship with business and future business leaders, and already the school is sort of handpicked by companies like BCG for diversity fellowships, women in the MBA fellowships, but also big telecoms, banks. Now, what is it that they see in IESE, in the talent that is then graduating from the school, that is so important to them and aligns with their future goals?
That it's interesting because we received that feedback from a recruiter. It was even as an American recruiter, saying that they felt that the IESE graduates were better prepared for the world. So I think that this is something like I believe that we are very academically strong. So we put a lot of focus in academics, but our academics they are case discussions, right? So yes, we are learning content, but at the end of the day, we're learning to discuss problems, right? And again, discussing problems on a very diverse environment. So I feel that this builds in us the notion that there's no one correct answer, right? That you need to negotiate, that you need to listen, that you need to be good in communicating yourself, right? I think that it's like in the beginning, in a case discussion or in a case class, it's terrifying to put your hand up depending on where you come from, right? For some people, it's very, very natural. But from others, even if you are an extrovert, so I consider myself an extrovert, and I've never had problems in speaking or speaking to people. But in class, in the first term, I was terrified, because I wasn't used to speaking my opinion in front of a lot of people. And I think that with the constant exercise of being in a team, so in the first year, we're splitting teams, right? Depending on nationality, backgrounds. So it's an algorithm actually that builds the teams, and then the admissions team actually helps adjust any detail. But so you need to be efficient in the way you communicate, right? You need to put your point across, because you're not going to have that many opportunities, right? You raise your hand probably once in the class and you're called. So you need to be efficient. You need to be able to make yourself understood. And I think that in the real world, right? So outside of the business world's walls, it's very important that you're able to manage well and to work well with people that are very different from you, to communicate, to listen, to be empathetic, right? And we also have the harder skills, right? The skills of looking into a problem and knowing how to ask the right questions, right? How to pull the right people into the different tasks, right? Which is, I think it's also something that we learn in the team, like managing the team. And these are very transversal skills, right? So no matter what you're going to do, if it's consulting, if it's finance, if it's tech, innovation, these are skills that are very useful for any type of job, right? So I would say that this is one of the reasons why we are so attractive to big companies and any type of big fellowship.
Right. Now, Jiang, Paula started with this idea of making the world a better place, which is a wonderful but a very big goal. as you thought, with the varied background and experience that you'd had about going to business school, finding the right MBA program for you, what was your thought process? What were the considerations, and of course the key factors that led you to choosing IESE?
Yeah, well, I'll kick off by telling you a little bit of background about myself, because I think it very much has to do with who you are, what you're looking for, to figure out what you want in a program. So for me, I'm originally Vietnamese, as you mentioned. I've lived equal parts of my life in the US, Mexico, and Vietnam. I had been working for about 9 years before entering the MBA program. I had started a couple companies, and I had been involved with some really big innovation projects for large corporates. So it was all a big of a mix. And for me specifically, academics wasn't my most, wasn't the most interesting thing that I was looking for. The first thing that I was looking for was actually to live in Europe. From my own experience, it's been very clear to me that there is so much value in living in a different country, being part of a different culture, and really understanding different ways that people live and people think. And so for me, I saw a lot of value in that. And so when looking for the business schools, I mostly targeted Europe. From there, the second thing is I wanted to learn from people who were as different than me as possible. So from different places, from different industries, and so on. And so that was the second part. And I think probably what really closed it for me was I knew a couple alumni from the school who are both entrepreneurs, very mission-driven, very purpose-driven, and they really actually lived exactly what Paul is describing to you. And so that was kind of sort of the decision-making process and the narrowing down process for me.
Right. Now, IESE in that European landscape stands out not just with the pedigree of Harvard Business School and others that were influential in creating the school, the case method, the role that it has, but also a 2-year program. And was that important to you? We talked about how quickly it feels that the 2 years are going by, but do you feel that that gave you added benefits?
Oh, that's interesting. So I think, I think maybe it depends a little bit what you're going after. I think the benefit of the 2-year program is you really get to be immersed into a completely different environment. I feel like the 1-year programs are really about grab and go. You come, you learn, and then you're off to the next thing. And I feel like the 2-year program really lets you kind of have more time to kind of think about what you're learning, to kind of process, to be able to be part of the community as well. And so I would say that's where I see the difference, or sort of the value with the 2-year program being.
Right. I mean, Paula, for the 2 years, presumably that gives a lot of flexibility in terms of course selection, how you can then shape the second year and the very varied interests and industries that people are then looking at. So tell us a little bit about that structure and from finance to entrepreneurship, the different options that are available.
Yeah, I actually think that the way that IESE is structured is very complete, right? And me being a graduate, a 2-year program was definitely a must. So I didn't apply to any schools that were 1 year. And as Zhang said, this is very individual, right? Very personal. Like, it depends on what you're going for. And I wanted something that would be a bit more complete. And when I got to IESE, that's what I realized, right? The first year is all mandatory courses. So you don't choose, you just go. And then, I think that the interesting part of that is that you're kind of forced to study subjects that not necessarily you would choose to study. But that they are also important for you to understand business as a whole, right? We don't expect people to be like experts in everything, but as a general manager, we believe that it's important that you know what people are talking about when you are in a room with a multifunctional team, right? So then in the first year, you just you have the very typical MBA courses. And then in the summer, you can choose to either do a summer internship, to build your own venture, so to go into the summer entrepreneurship experience, or now you also have the option of doing classes. So if you do summer classes, you can actually shorten the time that you're done with the classes and be done by the December instead of the next spring, right? And then in the second year, it comes the electives, right? And then you have a list of more than 80 electives that you can choose from. Now we have the option of pursuing 5 different concentrations. If you don't want to pursue any concentration, you can. So you can just like pick different subjects that don't belong to any umbrella. But if you want, you can choose certain courses that fall under the same concentration. So international business, tech data and digital business, finance, entrepreneurship and innovation, and sustainability. So if you get enough credits in one of those umbrellas, you get like a certificate from IESE that you're specialized in one of those subjects or topics. And you also have the international modules that I feel that it's something very special from IESE as well. So you have 2 weeks of intensive classes that you can go to either São Paulo, Mexico, New York in the Americas, and Kenya in Africa, and Dubai. We used to have Shanghai, but with the whole COVID situation, that was a bit unsure. So we don't know with the things, with the borders opening up in China, if this partnership is actually going to come back. But we now have Dubai, so it's kind of covered. And you also have the possibility of going to an exchange, right? So we have partnerships with more than 30 schools around the world. Most of them are in the US, so you can choose to do one of the terms, and instead of the electives at IESE, you can go to another business school, right? So I would say that the first year is very fixed, but the second year can give you the flexibility to drive yourself to wherever you want to go, right? And if I could add to the question that you actually asked, Zhang, I think that one of the benefits of the second year is also for you to engage with the clubs that you want, right? I think that the second year is where we really flourish on our personal interests, right? And we have this flexibility to choose where we want to go. Because the first year is very, super intense, 3 classes a day and then 3 cases. So it's very, very, very academic driven. And then in the second year, you can navigate different waters, right? So I was very involved in social entrepreneurship, education, innovation, right? So I was going to tracks in different countries to meet companies. And then with everything that you learned in the second year, in the first year, you're more ready to really know what your interests are. And then in the second year, you can go deeper on them, right? So I feel that like a longer program gives you this opportunity of like realizing where you really want to go and giving you time to pursue it, right? It's not the grab and go, as Zhang said, that has its advantages as well, depending what you're looking for.
And
but if you're looking for a more immersive experience, it can be better.
In terms of that learning experience, and with what Paula has described, choices, 80 electives, international study trips that you can take, all of these different groups and clubs and things. Sometimes so much choice, it must be difficult to prioritize. So how did you make decisions about where you would focus your time?
I really focused my time on interest. At the end of the day, I knew that the more interest I had in the topic, the more I was going to put into it and the more I was going to get out of it. And so that's what it was for me, actually. And so I didn't pick a concentration. I just kind of picked whatever class where I felt like that actually sounds very interesting and I would learn a lot from that. And that was kind of how it went for me. I would very much echo sort of from the academic side to kind of share my perspective on that. It is very much as Paula describes. I would say that the world we live in now, content is essentially free. And so you come to the school not necessarily for its content, but for the curation of that content, and for being what should you take, in what order should you take it, what are the really core important topics that you want to know about. And then from there, a system that is quite strict. So sort of that personal coach that actually really makes you sit down and learn this, because IESE does have a reputation of being more academically strict. And then lastly is the professors who are going to sort of provoke your thinking and really push you. And so I think that's really what you come to the program for, academically speaking. And I would say the first year is very much a lot of general basic topics. It's very much meant to get everybody on the same page. And as Paula was saying too, it's very friendly for different people. So as a a school, you're really encouraged to, in the school, to participate. And I think at times, because of the way you're encouraged to participate, you end up getting more quantity over quality. But the reason for that is because you want everybody to participate, because you're in a new environment, you're studying in English for the first time, perhaps, for a lot of people. And so it's really friendly, and it does think very clearly on how do you put people through this program to first give them the basics, warm them up, and then the second year, everything dives in much deeper. And so it's well thought out in that way.
Right. So this really thoughtful curation, and you talk about, the quality of the faculty. But if I take your example, Jiang, you had finance in your undergrad studies, consulting, transformational change, building businesses. You're a co-founder of a business. So how does then that student body also contribute to the learning experience and bringing together so many different perspectives and experiences?
Yeah, I'll give you an example that really sticks to me in a class that I took last term. It was an economics class, and we went through different economic issues that we discussed as a group. And what's very cool about that is, for example, you want to talk about immigration. And the very traditional discussion about immigration is between the border with the US and Mexico. That's the most common one you hear about, and you hear that perspective. But because of ESA's makeup, you can have a discussion about what does that mean for Korea? What does that mean in Europe? What does immigration look like there? What does immigration look like in these other different regions of the world? And what are the conflicts that exist there? And what are the perspectives of each of these countries? And so that, I would say, is something that I found to be super interesting, super valuable, and really deep, interesting discussions.
I guess
but again, I'd have to say you get that your second year. Your first year, you have to endure like lots of learning, lots of classes that you may not have chosen to be in, but your second year is fantastic.
Right. And the clubs and activities are just the amplification, I guess, as you say, following those interests and discovering. Do you feel that there's an overwhelming sense of discovery in the 2 years, Jiang?
There's definitely an overwhelming sense of there's so much you can do. And you have to pick and choose. And I would say that students often have to pick between their career or their social life or academics, and that's kind of or their sleep and their physical health. So that's kind of the rotating conflict that is there. But there's really an abundance of things that you can get into. From my observation, for people who want specific careers in consulting or finance, there are very structured programs and clubs that really support that really help you create the pipeline and be able to do what you want. For some of the other sort of less common, maybe not necessarily less common, but you're not going to be the majority of the group. Maybe you don't have 200 students going in that direction. There are other resources, but for those students, it's a little bit more about paving their own path.
Right. If we stay on the theme of career paths, Paula, how the 2-year program, you mentioned summer internships, or you could, look at building your own venture. So how does it work to then take all of these different areas of interest, background? Many will use IESE to make a career transition. How are you supporting them to then gain exposure and find the right path for them?
Yeah. So the career support starts even before you get to campus. So we have onboarding over summer where students have to already start reflecting on where they want to go, because we understand that it's a very maybe volatile moment where you come to business school thinking you want something, but then you're exposed to other things, and then it can just change direction, right? Which is fine. I think that we are going to be exposed to things that we didn't expect before, and maybe that can spark some interest. But like not to just go with the flow. Like more and more, the career center is actually making people stop and reflect and do some exercises that will consolidate their interests and their passions, and their competitiveness as well, right? Because we need to understand that it's not just because you have an MBA that you're going to be able to do anything that you want, right? Like your background counts. You have people that you're going to be competing against, right? So we're also trying to build awareness on where our strengths lay and where we would be more competitive, right? So we can increase our chances of succeeding. And so there's a lot of career support in that sense. So it's the pillar that we call career management. And then you have the counselors that are going to be focused in certain industries, right? So as Zhang said, you have consulting, you have finance, but then you also have tech, you have consumer goods, healthcare, right? So if you know the industry that you're interested in, you're going to have a counselor that is focused on that industry, that develops the relationships with companies on that scope, right? That brings people, these companies to campus, that organizes visits to companies in the respective countries, right? So there's a lot of business development from the career center side to bring those companies and bring them close to our students, and also build the skills necessary to get people ready to get the jobs that they want, right? And for them to understand and to decide the jobs that they want, because I know that this can be, most of our students actually shift careers, and it's a very uncertain, right? Because the truth is, I think it's impossible to really know what lays ahead on the MBA, right? So it's very easy to just change your mind. So we're trying to build this awareness on our students so they're more intentional on their plans, right? And realistic.
Right. So we've talked about courses and the great options. We've talked about careers. We've talked about clubs. We've talked about culture and community. So Zhang, if we bring all of that together, you've got exciting opportunities that might take you further east to Dubai or beyond as you graduate in just a few months' time. Reflecting on the IESE experience, 3 things that really stand out for you, perhaps, you know, the things that you're going to remember and take with you, what would those be?
Oh, I would say the first one I kind of already mentioned is that ability to have discussions and really hear very interesting perspectives that you would not hear otherwise, and have them, and also in an environment, because it's not just the open internet, but also specifically you're in an environment with people who have been vetted for their values, for their kind of their purpose and what they're driving towards. It's also a very comfortable and safe environment to have very open discussions about a lot of these things. And so I think that's actually super interesting. So I would say that's a big takeaway for me in terms of the IESE experience. Another one I would say is just being part of such a large group. I think it is so interesting, and it's such a good exercise to be part of a big group where you have to balance yourself between learning from them and still being yourself and still figuring out what you want and staying on path with what you want. Because it's also very easy to see other people doing different things and then start questioning if they're doing the right thing and you should switch. And so I think it's a great exercise for sort of really having to harness who you are, what you want, and push your path forward. And I would say the third thing that I value the most for coming to IESE is actually having the opportunity to learn about different regions of the world, which is kind of how I ended up on a project. Because I was already based in Europe, I ended up on a project in Dubai, which is how I ended up learning about the Middle East. And so I would feel like those 3 things are kind of what I think of in terms of my IESE experience.
And Paula, you know the school both as a student and as a member of the senior leadership team. One thing that you think really defines IESE Business School? It's tough because I'm saying just one, but can you find one?
Just one. I think what really defines IESE is, I think transformation can be a good word to define it. And I think that it encapsulates a lot of the topics that we've discussed today. Because I think that that's the ultimate goal, right? Is to build or provide our students with this transformational experience, right? Because as I said, and a lot of what Zane mentioned, it's probably what we live at the IESE is unprecedented, right? We've never lived before, and it's very hard that we will live. I'm still at the IESE, and I think I still have a part, you know, like a taste of what the MBA used to be. Like my team is still very international, right? I'm still in Europe. I went back to Brazil after my graduation, and then I was covering LATAM. So I was able to keep a lot of the MBA aspects, but it's true that this constant exposure to different views and cultures, you know, on a very intense learning environment. So that's very dense, right? So that really puts a lot of pressure and it transforms you. So I agree that many of us can go into like some sort of an identity crisis, and then we come out better, right? So this transformation, I think that can be like a good way to maybe summarize what the IESE is going for.
Right. And as your screen says behind you, a mark to make and a world to change. And both of you, thank you, because I think you've gone beyond marketing statements on a website or, you know, in the bigger world of business schools. And Xiang, you're very thoughtful. I think you've emphasized just how personal this decision is and the journey. So if we were to wrap up perhaps with your one final piece of advice to anybody considering business school, considering the MBA, what would that advice be?
I would tell them to spend time trying to figure out who they are, what they want, and what it is that they're looking for. Because I think for some people, going to an MBA means is a way for them to have a strong brand that they can now kind of incorporate with them. For some people, an MBA is a place to learn about business. You're transferring from being an engineer over to a different type of role, and that's really the important part for you. For other people, it's about getting to know others, getting to meet people, getting to engage with very different people. And so I think it's really important to first identify yourself. What is it that you want to get out of the program? And I think that will help very much decide where should you go? What type of school do you want to look for? Because at the end of the day, I know all MBAs love their rankings, but each school is a little bit different, and they do have different things that they offer that make them unique. So I think it's worth taking the time to reflect and understand what you're looking for is the first thing.
Xiang brings up with the whole admissions process, which is part of your job title, Paula, in terms of being an admissions director, and all of the time that you and your team spend to find that fit. And you know, Xiang also talked about creating a safe space because, you know, people that you've identified for the program, you know, can have those wide-reaching discussions. So perhaps finally, how do we find out more about IESE, getting in touch with students and alum, of course, your team, events through the website? What are good ways to get in touch with the school?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important part of the admission process, that sometimes candidates underestimate the importance or even the possibility of being close to the admissions officers or committee, right? So at the IESE, we have a very high touch and a very personal application process. So we are very available, right? All of us in the admissions committee, we are IESE alumni. So we feel that our job is to counsel more than to just assess and select. We understand how the process feels and how important it is, the decision of choosing your business school and going for an MBA. So we've been in the candidate's shoes and we want to support, right? So we have many online events, maybe too many, but that's the advantage, one of the good heritages from the pandemic, that we became very global in our events. So if you want, from now on, we probably have almost one event a week that people can join. We also have regional events. So the admissions officers, they are split by regions. And then we have people all over the globe: New York, São Paulo, Tokyo, Singapore, China, Hong Kong, and Spain. So you're going to find anyone, and India, we also have someone in India. So you're going to find someone in your time zone for sure. And then reach out, right? We have like a feedback on your profile option in our website. So you can just put your CV or LinkedIn, you're going to get an answer from us. And, you know, like book a slot and we can actually talk to you. Going for conversations with alumni and current students is also very important, because I think that it matches what Zhang was saying on, you know, like if you know what you're looking for and you talk to someone, you can see, you know, like the similarities, how, and I think like we tend to try to make everything very rational, but at the end of the day, I think it should be an emotional as well decision as well, right? To see if you like the people, because these are going to be your alumni network forever. So you need to see if you actually like the people, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with them. And after you graduate, these are the people that you should be counting on, right? Forever. Because it is the greatest heritage of the MBA is the people that you can always reach out even 10, 20 years after graduating, right? So I think that this, you know, like kind of checking out if you like the people, I think this is actually very important as well. And for candidates to understand that they also have power, right? So we are selecting them, but they are also selecting us. So it is a two-way process, right? So they need to be sure that this is the school that they would like to be going. And I think that these conversations with current students and alumni are key.
Right. Well, with such a busy calendar of events, we're always delighted that you include Centre Court in that schedule. And Zhang, with the remaining months, enjoy those last few months on the IESE campus in Barcelona before you head off to exciting new adventures and take that wonderful network with you. So both of you, thank you for a great session together. And I'm sure that many of our viewers will be reaching out in the weeks and months to come. Thanks, both of you.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure.